This we did last time. We started with bool type, and we looked at escape sequences, we looked at backslash n, we looked at backslash r. Behavior of backslash r was quite weird depending on the system, and we looked at a case where we can escape a slash sign, a backslash, using an escape sequence. So if you want to escape anything, or whenever possible, you simply put backslash. We also looked at declaring using the auto variable. When you declare an auto variable, later on, if you want to change the type, it's going to be an issue, because auto means it has to know what the variable is. So declaring with auto is not possible, but what is possible, initialization with auto is possible. See the difference? When we declare a variable, we give it a name, we give it a data type, that's it. But when we initialize, we give it a value. So auto needs to know what the variable is. It would be silly for me to simply say auto my underscore war and be done with it. Yes? We know what the variable is. So, and we looked at a bunch of cases where we converted, or we used my var and or my underscore var and my underscore var underscore a, did a bunch of operations. We used size of. What is the purpose of the size of function? It is going to tell us pick up where we stopped last time. So going to add another auto variable. I wanted to store a character. And I'll use uppercase A. The size of character variable is size of. I'm going to put my underscore var underscore char. Or car. I don't know how they pronounce it, but I pronounce it as car, but Control S and Control Alt N. Control Alt N is going to work only if you have code runner. Yes? So character has 1 byte, not 1 bit. So 1 byte allocation. Is it possible for me to store? Give me a word. Cheese. Yep. Okay. My underscore var underscore str. I'm going to call cheese. Oops. Let's see what the size is. Going
to execute this, so Control and N. It's giving me the size of string variable is full. What did you get? Error, okay. String,
when we specify what should we use, or
double quotes. So going to specify with double quotes. Now, some programming languages does not or do not have the requirement of distinguishing between double and single quotes. R doesn't, for instance. I believe Python doesn't either. But of course, as you can see, C++ makes it a requirement. So I'm going to run. What just happened? Did I make a mistake? Okay, so what did you get? 8. Why am I getting an error?
Because of line 30, you put my variable A wrong. Right there, you put quotation mark.
Good. So, N8. So, string allocation is 8, but don't split it up. Well, C is 1 byte, H is 1 byte, E is 1, E is 1, S and E. How many do we have so far? 6, but we end up getting 8 because we know character has 1 byte. I want you to type cheese string instead of cheese and see what you get. Not during cheese. String. There should be space. It is still 8. So did it count a character for each, did it allocate a byte for each character in cheese, or did it allocate memory in a bulk manner? Bulk. So all the cheese string is put in one place in bulk. Now, I am going to print the string that we declared or initialized. The string output is my underscore var underscore str. What does std colon and L do? Goes to the next line. Now, I did this to show you that whatever that is stored properly. It is stored as cheese string. But it treats all of string as one object, not as individual characters. So that's the difference between how memory is allocated for a character versus how it is allocated for a string. Next is to use a constant. I'm going to continue the same code and start a new source file for the next topic. So
So a constant is something that doesn't change. We know that, that's why we call it a constant. So in C++ and C, you can create a constant variable by using the const data type, which is const. And let's see, give me a name. Jimmy. So programmers, C++ programmers have this habit. I believe the book goes over programming styles. Each programmer will have their own style. I always tell students that if someone looked at my R code, they will know who wrote that code, because I have a unique style that people can pick up on the more they look at it. So you may develop one too. Oftentimes, what I have seen is people who do a lot of C, C++ tend to use all uppercase for a constant. That's just what I've noticed. So I'm going to do const, make it a constant and give it a type. I'll do float. So a constant float object Jimmy, and Jimmy is equal to 100.12. I'm going to get the output of the constant, Jimmy, what did we get when we executed? Why? So, my bad, that is probably an IDE issue. So, rather if we get an error, again, anytime you have an error, you shouldn't freak out, you just have to pay attention to what it says. What does it say? Uninitialized const Jimmy. So, what should you do if you have to take a guess? Huh? The data type. So you want to get rid of that float? Let's get rid of that float. Still giving me an error. Jordan, how did you recognize it? Was it Danny? Oh, my bad.
Well, it says uninitialized, and that's not initialization, it's just
Exactly. So let's take this and put it in here and call it 100.12. And this time it worked. So, declaring a constant will not work. Constants must be initialized. Good. Now,
It's nice that it threw a word in about scope, because I wanted to mention something about scope and then it just showed up, which is nice. So I'm going to get to scope in a second. Backslash n, the output of some math with constant is Jimmy plus 8. Before I run it, let me ask you a question. Every single output that we printed seemed like, next line, next line, next line, and all of a sudden there's a huge gap between the T string output and 100.12. Can you tell me why? George?
And down like the string output, and then with the backslash n at the beginning of the constant.
Very good. So there is an n line there that will account for one skip. There is a backslash n there, that would be the next skip. So there are two lines that we skipped. So (108.12). Now I'm going to do Jimmy equals Jimmy times 8. I want you to stop and think for a second and then tell me what the answer will be without executing. The answer for Jimmy, if you print Jimmy, don't execute. So if I simply run this, Control-Alt-N, it gives an error. It tells us assignment of read-only variable. Reason being, Jimmy is assigned or is initialized as a constant. So I cannot use that to manipulate, overwrite it. It is a fixed value. That's fine. Well, could I at least simply put a different number? Because I want to change Jimmy to something else for later use. So instead of putting a mathematical expression, can I simply do 200.24? A number. Simply put a number. The same error. You simply cannot assign maybe an expression overwriting Jimmy or putting just a value overwriting Jimmy. It's not going to work because you're dealing with a constant. So if I did constant float Jimmy equals 200.24, getting an error. Now, what is the error? Jimmy is already declared. You cannot declare it again. Clearly, the error tells us what the mistake is. You're trying to redeclare a constant. Not possible. I want you to try this. I want you to type int myvar equals 2. So the redeclaration method is not just for a constant. It is for any variable that you create. Once you create a variable, it is in the scope of main. That is present in the scope. So you cannot redeclare the same variable again. In other languages, such as Python or interpreted languages, I can do that. I can define a equals 9. Later on, I could do a equals 24. Perfectly fine. Can't do here. Now, I'm going to delete that part. Both of those. So const float, I'll probably put a comment here. Now, that would comment the entire line. Sometimes we want to put a comment to the side to explain as to what you're doing. So return a value. That is okay. In C++, that's one way of doing it. I tend to write my comment about a statement and followed by a bunch of statements. That's just my way of doing it. And most people do it this way also. It's a matter of choice. So that will not work. Because of redeclaration. Same argument there as well. Yes?
So there's no way to add a different value to the same variable later on in the code with C++?
You can add a number, right? You can update its value, but you can't declare it again. So each time you go int, you are declaring it to be a new object. That is not doable. So later on, I can assign a different value. That is fine. See the difference between the two? I mean, if I come up with a programming language where I just cannot update a variable with a value after I declare, then I'm screwed. I can't do anything, period. So, let's see. I'm going to do okay. Scope of variable. Give me a name. Tyler? Is that your name? What's your name? Charles. Okay. Scope of variable Tyler. I'm going to do Tyler. So earlier I was talking about scope. Because of scope, you cannot rewrite a variable, or not rewrite, I mean redeclare a variable. Same thing. Tyler is not in the scope of the main function. Yes? So we are defining a bunch of variables inside main, and Tyler is not in there. So if I'm going to use a variable, all declarations must be prior to use. So if I want to declare Tyler, could I do this? So, okay. Did it work? No.
So it has to be before the use of Tyler. So you want to declare it prior to use, or else it's not going to work. This time, when I run it, it should. Whoa, what did I do? Oh, Colin. Oops. Good. So that's what we mean by scope. Scope is where the variable exists in the realm of the program. So in this program, or in this particular file or code, Tyler is inside the scope of main. Now, way later, we will create user-defined functions. And if we have variables defined inside user-defined functions, they typically will have local scope. Local scope in the sense scope that is local to that one function. In contrast to local scope, you have global scope, which is a scope to every single function that you want to use. So I think the book talks about it later when we deal with functions. Are we clear with scope? Okay. Okay, so we'll start a new script and end this one here.